My name is Blake Monroe, and I'm 30 years old. Today, I live a quiet but fulfilling life with my wife Anna and our 3-year-old son, Austin, in the suburbs of Portland. I have a stable job, a cozy home filled with sunlight, and enough financial security to sleep soundly at night, thanks in part to an inheritance from my grandfather. But beneath this calm surface lies a storm I've never fully escaped, the scars of a childhood where fairness was as rare as rain in the desert. Growing up, my family appeared perfect on the outside, a modest house, 2 parents who worked hard, and 2 sons they claimed to love equally. But appearances can be deceiving. From the moment Owen, my younger brother, entered the world, it felt like he carried the sun in his pocket while I was left chasing shadows. At first, things seemed balanced. We wore matching outfits during holidays, shared toys without too much fuss, and even endured Dad's infamous life lessons together when one of us got into trouble. But everything changed when I turned 12. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. One evening, Owen's teacher called home to rave about his exceptional talent for business. She said, "Owen shows financial reasoning and leadership skills well beyond his age." That phone call became the tipping point, the moment the scales of favoritism tilted irreversibly toward him. Within days, Mom bought Owen the deluxe edition of Monopoly, signed him up for some overpriced entrepreneurship summer camp, and couldn't stop bragging about his million-dollar ideas over dinner, even as he slurped spaghetti through his teeth. Meanwhile, I sat silently across the table, unnoticed. I wasn't quick-witted like Owen, but I was steady. I wasn't the brightest in class, but I always finished what I started. I didn't dazzle anyone with grand speeches, but I prided myself on being meticulous and reliable. Yet none of that mattered to them. To my parents, hard work seemed invisible unless it came wrapped in glittering potential. And once Owen was crowned the golden child, I became little more than furniture, something present but easily ignored. The breaking point came during my final year of middle school. After months of grinding late nights and sacrificing weekends, I earned recognition from the principal for outstanding effort. It was a small award, but it meant the world to me. I imagined my father walking into the auditorium, clapping proudly as I accepted the certificate. Instead, he didn't show up, not even to ask how it went later that evening. When I confronted him the next morning, he simply shrugged and muttered, "Awards don't pay bills, Blake." That night, lying awake in bed, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself a question that would haunt me for years: was I truly their son? Or had I been born under someone else's star, only to end up lost in the wrong family? Amidst the neglect, 2 figures stood quietly by my side, Grandpa Harold and Uncle Andrew. My grandfather wasn't the warm, cuddly type. He was stern and reserved, the kind of man whose presence commanded respect. But in those rare moments when it was just the 2 of us in his kitchen, bathed in the soft glow of a yellow light, he revealed a different side. He'd sip coffee and say things like, "You don't need to be like anyone else to be good. Just do your part well and keep your heart clean." Sometimes, after helping him tidy the backyard, he'd slip a $100 bill into my hand, whispering, "Save this for school. Don't tell anyone." Those stolen moments gave me hope, a lifeline to cling to when the weight of rejection threatened to crush me. Uncle Andrew, on the other hand, was softer but no less impactful. He listened when I talked about school or vented about the injustices I dared not voice aloud. He taught me practical things, how to open a bank account, how to fill out financial aid forms, but also something far more valuable: resilience. He once told me, "Sometimes family isn't your safety net, but they might hand you a walking stick so you can find your way forward." His words stayed with me, a quiet reminder that not all heroes wear capes. By the time I graduated high school, I knew staying in that house would only trap me in a cycle of favoritism I could no longer endure. When my acceptance letter to Layton University arrived, I hoped, naively, that my parents would finally see my worth. Instead, they dismissed my dreams with chilling indifference. "We can't throw money into something with no guaranteed return," Mom said, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. Dad added, "Fairness means putting things where they belong. And if you can't accept that, then move out." So I did. I packed my bags, swallowed my pride, and walked away, carrying nothing but the belief that I could stand on my own 2 feet. The summer after high school graduation was supposed to be a time of celebration, a gateway to independence, dreams, and new beginnings. For me, it started with hope. I had earned a partial scholarship to Layton University, one of the most prestigious schools in the state. It wasn't full tuition, but it was enough to get my foot in the door. All I needed was $10,000 from my parents to cover the first year. After that, I planned to work part-time jobs, apply for more scholarships, and scrape together whatever else I could. When the acceptance letter arrived, I held it in trembling hands, imagining how proud my family would be. My parents might finally see what I'd always believed about myself, that I was capable, determined, and worthy of their support. That evening, as we gathered around the dining table for dinner, I waited until everyone had finished eating before clearing my throat. I got accepted into Layton University, I announced, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. It's a partial scholarship. Uncle Andrew, who happened to be visiting along with his wife and son, broke into a wide grin. That's incredible, Blake, he said, slapping his knee. You've worked hard for this. You deserve it. I smiled faintly, feeling a flicker of pride, but then turned to my parents. Mom looked down at her plate, fiddling with her fork. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. His expression remained unreadable, like stone carved by years of indifference. Partial scholarship, huh, he muttered. That still leaves a lot uncovered: tuition, housing, books. That's not cheap. I know, I replied, swallowing hard. But I'm not asking for much. Just $10,000 for the first year. After that, I'll handle the rest. Mom set her teacup down with an audible clink. Her tone was sharp, dismissive. Blake, you need to be realistic. We can't throw money into something with no guaranteed return. Your brother is different. Owen has potential. He'll take this family somewhere. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. No guaranteed return? Was that all I was to them, a gamble they weren't willing to take? I stared at her, searching for some sign of softness, some recognition of the effort I'd poured into every test, every assignment, every late night spent studying. But there was nothing. Dad nodded slowly, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. You didn't do anything wrong, but if we have to choose, the money has to go where it counts. And in this case, that's your brother. The room seemed to shrink around me. My chest tightened, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Uncle Andrew spoke up then, his usually calm demeanor replaced by something sharper. Do you two really believe both kids are your children? He asked, his voice cutting through the tension. How can you talk like Blake's not worth investing in? My father didn't even turn to face him. He just waved a hand dismissively. This is our family business. Please don't get involved. No one said another word after that. 2 minutes later, Uncle Andrew stood up, motioned for his family to follow, and left without looking back. Later that night, unable to sleep, I replayed the conversation over and over in my mind. Each word felt heavier than the last, pressing down on me until I thought I might suffocate. Around 8 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Uncle Andrew. Blake, come to my place now, he said. His voice was calm, but there was urgency beneath it. I drove the 15 minutes to his house in silence, replaying the rejection in my head. When I arrived, the smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted me. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, steam rising from 2 ceramic mugs. I'm giving you $50,000, he said abruptly. No interest. You'll pay it back within 5 years after you graduate. Deal? I sat there, stunned. The warmth of the coffee fogged up my glasses, but it wasn't the drink making my chest feel heavy, it was gratitude so overwhelming I couldn't speak. Why are you doing this for me? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, rotating the mug gently in his hands. Then he looked at me, his eyes softening. Because I can't stand watching you be mistreated, he said. And I won't let that unfairness steal your future. But I only need $10,000 for the first year, I protested. That amount, it's too much. I don't want to take on a big debt. He shook his head firmly. No. I want you to focus on school. Don't get distracted by money. Don't take night shifts. Don't drive Uber. If you stumble, no one in that house is going to catch you. His words hit home. For the first time, someone truly believed in me, not because of who my parents were, but because of what I'd worked for. One more thing, he added, his tone serious. Don't tell your parents. Trust me, if they find out you have that money, they'll try to drain every last cent. I nodded quickly. I promise. 2 days later, the $50,000 appeared in my account. Staring at the number on the screen, I realized it wasn't just financial support, it was validation. Someone saw me. Someone trusted me. Over the next 4 years, I worked tirelessly. Between classes, I juggled shifts at the campus library and a local coffee shop. I applied for every scholarship and grant I qualified for, refusing to touch the loan unless absolutely necessary. By the time I graduated, I had used only $20,000 of the total. On the day I turned 25, exactly 2 years after landing my first job, I went to Uncle Andrew's house to repay the entire amount. As I walked in, he was tidying up the backyard. I'm here to pay back the full $50,000, I said, my voice filled with resolve. He wiped his hands on a towel and looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head, half smiling. You don't need to pay it back, he said. Come with me. There's someone I want you to meet. 15 minutes later, we pulled up to my grandfather's house. Inside, sitting in his armchair by the window, was Grandpa Harold. The $50,000 wasn't from me, Uncle Andrew explained. It was from your grandfather. He gave it to me to loan to you as a test. Grandpa stood, placing a firm yet gentle hand on my shoulder. You kept your word, he said. You lived right. You didn't run away from anything. So that money doesn't need to be paid back. As I left that day, I realized something profound. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. 3 years had passed since I graduated from college, started my career, and began building a life with Anna. Our son, Austin, was born on a crisp autumn morning, his arrival filling our home with laughter and purpose. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to love someone unconditionally, someone who looked up at me not as Blake Monroe, the overlooked son, but as Dad. I had hoped, perhaps naively, that becoming a father would change something within my parents. Maybe they'd see their grandchild as a bridge, a chance to mend the fractures between us. I imagined them holding Austin for the first time, cooing over his tiny fingers and toes, finally realizing that bloodlines weren't just about favoritism, they were about connection. But deep down, I knew better. Still, I let myself believe, for Austin's sake. When Austin turned 1, I decided to throw a small gathering at my parents' house. It wasn't extravagant, just a quiet celebration to introduce him to our extended family. My mother sounded genuinely excited when I called her, her voice soft and warm like she hadn't been distant all these years. Come home, she said. We'll make it special. I transferred $5,000 to her account without hesitation. It wasn't about the money, it was about trust, a fragile thread I still clung to, hoping it wouldn't snap under the weight of reality. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday evening around 6 o'clock, Anna and I packed Austin into the car and drove to my childhood home. As we pulled into the driveway, I froze. The backyard was decorated far more lavishly than I'd expected. Tables stretched across the lawn, string lights twinkled from the porch, and balloons floated gently in the breeze. But something felt off. Then I saw it, a large backdrop standing proudly in the garden. Its glittery capital letters didn't spell out, "Welcome baby Austin." Instead, they read, "Owen and Madison's engagement party." My heart sank. I gripped Anna's hand tightly as she looked at me, confusion etched across her face. There I stood, holding my newborn son like an uninvited guest at a party meant for him. The emotions I'd buried for decades, the neglect, the betrayal, the endless cycle of being overlooked, felt like a balloon squeezed past its limit. I clenched my fists and shouted across the garden, loud enough for everyone to hear, "What the hell is going on here?" The music stopped abruptly. Every eye turned toward me. My mother rushed over, her voice rushed and flustered. "Blake, this is a shared party. I thought combining them would be easier." I stepped back, staring at her. "A shared party? Did you ever tell me that?" She stammered, unable to answer. I pointed at the backdrop. "If this is a shared party, then where's Austin's name? Where is my son in any of this?" Still no answer. That's when my father stepped out of the house, hands in his pockets, his voice deep and cold. "Don't turn this into a scene. Are you trying to embarrass the whole family?" I turned to him, feeling every moment of the years I'd spent being overlooked crash into my chest. Then I glanced to the left. Uncle Andrew and Grandpa Harold stood quietly near the edge of the garden. Neither said a word, but they both nodded at me, and that was enough. They were with me. I didn't hold back anymore. I fired back at my father, my voice rising with each word. "This family image you're trying to protect, did it ever include me? I paid for a party to welcome my son. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time I'd get to be the priority. But no, nothing's changed. Still lies. Still treating me like the outsider." At that moment, my father hit his breaking point. He snapped, his voice sharp and guttural. "Shut up or get out." I stared straight into his eyes, said nothing, then turned and walked up to the stage. Grabbing the mic from the stunned MC, I addressed the crowd. "If anyone's wondering what's going on, let me clear it up," I began, my voice steady, every word landing with weight. "This party, it was paid for with my money. I gave my mother $5,000 to throw a welcome party for my newborn son, Austin. Instead, they quietly turned it into my brother's engagement celebration." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I gripped the mic tighter, my voice dropping lower. "And this isn't new. I've had scholarships pulled, been asked to step aside, and told to figure it out on my own because I was never the priority. Owen's always been the golden boy, always the center of everything." I paused, took a deep breath, and looked at Austin snuggled in Anna's arms, his cheeks flushed, wide-eyed at the noise. "But today is different because I'm a father now. And my son, he's never going to grow up in silence the way I did." Lowering the mic, I continued, no one moved. No one stopped me, for the very first time in my life. My voice echoed through a home that had spent years pretending not to hear me. As soon as I finished speaking, the air felt frozen. But then, my father charged forward, rage twisting his face. Before he could reach me, Uncle Andrew stepped out, blocking his path. Their eyes locked, and though no words were exchanged, the message was clear: Blake wasn't standing alone. Turning back to the crowd, I spoke one final sentence, each word carved into my bones: from this moment on, I'm no longer your son. Go live your lives with your golden child. With that, I dropped the mic, stepped off the stage, and walked straight to Anna and Austin. Moments later, we left the party. 1 year after Austin was born, I received a call from Uncle Andrew. His voice was strained, tight with emotion. "Blake," he said, "your grandfather, he's gone." The news hit me like a freight train. Just 2 days earlier, Grandpa Harold had been fine. He told me he was rereading The Old Man and the Sea, a book he'd read countless times, and that he wanted to buy Austin a giant wooden block set for his growing collection of toys. I never got to say thank you. I never got to hug him one last time. Losing him wasn't just losing a family member, it was losing the first person who ever truly saw me for who I was, a man trying to rise above silence and neglect. A month later, we gathered at his house for the reading of the will. By 9 a.m., the living room was packed. Relatives lined up on couches, chairs, and even stood along the walls. Walter Crowley, my grandfather's attorney, stepped forward. His silver hair glistened under the morning light as he began the formalities, confirming everyone's presence and affirming that Grandpa Harold was of sound mind when he drafted the document. Then, he started reading. One by one, names were called, assets distributed. Aunt Carol inherited the vintage Ford Thunderbird that had sat untouched in the garage for decades. Aunt Linda received ownership of a rental property in Tacoma along with a sizable cash amount. Uncle Andrew kept the lakeside cabin, which had always been his favorite retreat. Everyone seemed satisfied, until Mr. Crowley reached the final section of the will. All eyes turned toward my parents. Mr. Crowley said calmly, flipping the page. "Mr. Harold Monroe has decided to transfer all assets originally intended for his son Richard Monroe and daughter-in-law Martha Monroe to his grandson Blake Monroe." A wave of gasps rippled through the room. My father shot up from his seat, slamming his hand on the table. "This is outrageous," he shouted, pointing directly at me. "He planned this with Andrew. It's a setup." My mother burst into tears, clutching her chest. Owen threw his water glass onto the floor, his voice cracking with frustration. "This isn't fair," he yelled, pacing back and forth. But Mr. Crowley didn't flinch. He tapped once on the file before him and raised his voice slightly, cutting through the chaos. "Please remain calm," he said firmly. Then, addressing my parents and Owen, he continued, "This will is legally binding, signed and witnessed in full mental clarity. Any attempt to contest or disrupt the process will be subject to legal consequences." The room fell silent, heavy with tension. After the reading ended, I stepped outside, my mind still reeling. My father was already waiting at the gate, his face twisted with bitterness. He looked at me, not with rage, but with something colder, sharper. "You bastard," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You think this means you've won?" I didn't respond. I gave him one long look, then walked straight to my car, opened the door, and drove away without looking back. 2 years passed. Life moved on. Anna, Austin, and I built a quiet life together, a small house filled with sunlight, laughter, and love. For those 2 years, there were no texts, no calls, no forced reunions. No mention of the words Mom or Dad. I thought perhaps they'd finally accepted that I was no longer part of their lives. But deep down, something lingered, an ache, a question mark that refused to fade. Was I too harsh? Had I gone too far? Then, 2 days ago, the past came knocking again. It was evening, and the sun had just dipped below the horizon when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. Standing there was my mother, thinner than I remembered, her hair disheveled, her face hollow. She didn't speak right away, just stood there trembling. Finally, she whispered, "Your father's in the hospital. The doctors say he needs surgery." "I don't know what to do anymore," she added, her voice breaking. "Blake, please, I need $70,000 to cover the cost. I'm begging you." Her words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. I didn't feel anger, nor did I feel sympathy. Instead, there was only silence, a long, empty void pressing against my chest. "Where's Owen?" I asked plainly. She pressed her lips together, hesitating before whispering, "He doesn't have the money." I nodded slowly, then locked eyes with her. "Then sell the house you live in. Sell it and take care of him." She froze, her face pale. I took a step back, my hand resting on the doorframe. "From the day you hurt my son, right after he was born, I stopped being part of your lives. Leave now, or I'll call the police." For a moment, she stood there, unmoving. Then, quietly, she turned and walked away. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. Even though I'd cut ties completely, something inside me still felt unsettled. Was I wrong to turn them away? Part of me believed I'd done the right thing, that after everything they'd put me through, I owed them nothing. But another part wondered, if I were lying in a hospital bed someday, would I want them to show up? Would Austin understand why I made the choice I did? 2 days ago, the past came knocking again. The sun had just dipped below the horizon when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. Standing there was my mother, thinner than I remembered, her hair disheveled, her face hollow. She didn't speak right away, just stood trembling, clutching her coat tightly around her body as if trying to shield herself from an invisible storm. Finally, she whispered, "Your father's in the hospital. The doctors say he needs surgery." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. But then she straightened slightly, forcing herself to look me in the eye. "Blake, please, I need $70,000 to cover the cost. I'm begging you." Her words hung in the air like shards of glass, sharp and heavy. My chest tightened, but not with anger or sympathy, it was something else, a cold void that pressed against me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I stepped back, letting the silence stretch between us. "Where's Owen?" I asked finally, my tone flat. She hesitated, pressing her lips together before answering. "He doesn't have the money." I nodded slowly, then locked eyes with her. "Then sell the house you live in. Sell it and take care of him." Her face went pale, and she took a step forward, desperation flickering in her gaze. "Blake, we can't do that. It's our home, the only thing we have left. And Austin was supposed to be your grandson," I shot back, my voice rising. "But you turned his first birthday into a scar. You hurt my son, and because of that, I stopped being part of your lives. Leave now, or I'll call the police." For a few seconds, she just stood there, unmoving, tears streaming down her face. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. Was I too harsh? Too cruel? Part of me believed I'd done the right thing, that after everything they'd put me through, I didn't owe them anything. But another part wondered, if I were lying in a hospital bed someday, would I want them to show up? Would Austin understand why I made this choice? As dawn broke, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my head in my hands. Anna stirred beside me, her hand gently resting on my shoulder. "You okay?" she murmured, her voice sleepy but laced with concern. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Am I wrong to turn them away? Am I being too cold?" She sat up, wrapping her arms around me. "You're not cold, Blake. You've spent your whole life protecting us, protecting Austin, from the pain they caused you. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even if it hurts." Her words helped, but they didn't erase the lingering doubt. Later that morning, I decided to write everything down, not just for myself, but for others who might relate. I opened my laptop and began typing, pouring out every emotion, every memory, every question that had haunted me for years. By the time I finished, the sun was setting again, casting a golden glow across the room. Austin toddled in, his tiny hands clutching a wooden block set Grandpa Harold had bought him before he passed. He climbed onto my lap, giggling as he stacked the blocks precariously. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. For a moment, all the noise in my head faded, replaced by the sound of his laughter. "Austin," I said softly, kissing the top of his head, "I promise you'll never have to grow up feeling invisible. No matter what happens, I'll always protect you." And in that moment, I realized something profound. Cutting ties with my parents wasn't about revenge or hatred, it was about breaking the cycle. It was about giving Austin the childhood I never had, the love I never received. The next day, I posted my story online. Within hours, comments poured in, some agreeing with my decision, others questioning whether I'd gone too far. One comment stood out: "Family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when the world feels dark. You've built a new family, one based on love and respect. Don't let guilt make you forget that." Reading those words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Maybe I hadn't been too cold after all. That evening, as Anna cooked dinner and Austin played with his toys, I picked up my phone and scrolled through the photos saved in my gallery. There was one of Grandpa Harold, sitting in his armchair with Austin curled up at his feet. Another of Uncle Andrew teaching Austin how to stack blocks. And one of Anna and me, standing together under a string of lights, holding our newborn son for the first time. These were my people. These were my moments. As I tucked Austin into bed later that night, I kissed his forehead and whispered, "No matter what, Daddy will always be here for you." Walking back to the living room, I glanced at the photo of Grandpa Harold on the mantel. His stern yet kind eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. "Well done, my boy," I imagined him saying, just like he did that day after the engagement party fallout. And for the first time in years, I smiled, a quiet, content smile. The scars of the past would always remain, but they no longer controlled me. I had chosen my path, and it led to a life filled with sunlight, laughter, and love.